honoring those who are serving in our church continually, week in and week out. Next Sunday, after service, we'll be honoring those volunteers with a brunch for them. And so I thought, why not talk about service the whole month? Today, I am particularly focusing on Seva Service. And as we read in the Thought for the Week, this is a Sanskrit word, and it means together with. And it is selfless service. It's that divine service that we are giving of the wholeness that we are back to the wholeness that everyone else is. Because we know that we are all one. There's that one divine energy and presence that is interwoven through all of us. I love the song that we just heard, Building the Bridge Between the Hearts. So we want to know and acknowledge that when we give of our service, we are giving of ourselves, and that's the big S. We are giving of this divine energy, this divine flow. And as I had said in the Thought for the Week, sometimes, a lot of times, when we decide, oh, I'm going to give this or I'm going to do that for someone else, our ego steps in and tries to manipulate it a bit. Because what's in the reward for me? What's in it for me? And Seva Service is not that at all. It is just a total givingness, freely, openly, without any act or thought of a particular reward. It's literally giving from this whole heart that we are. And I was reminded of Emerson's, quote, and let me get my bloated nothingness out of the way of the divine circuits. Let those divine circuits be free. And let my bloated nothingness, which is the ego, which is that sense of separation, that sense that says, I've got to fight and I've got to stand out and whatever, the comparison game that goes on, to just let that be and let it step aside. I believe Jesus the Christ came here to teach us that we have this power within us, to acknowledge it and to listen for its guidance, for its direction. I believe that we are here on this earth plane, housed in this earth body, to express, to share, to discover more ways to give of our love. We are here as love agents. And I think that it's very important to recognize that since we are not separate, yes, we are individualized expressions of this one power that's perfect, and that's what's great about it. It says, hey, go do your thing. I want to have as much uniqueness as possible. But that power, that energy, that divine love, creativity that has produced everything in its completeness, and we are here to express it, we have been given free will. So we've been given the arena to discover more of what we truly are, which is love. We need to go back to recognize, recognize what we are, which is love, which is wholeness. This wholeness that connects and weaves through everything is what Seva Service is all about. We say, as the teacher, master teacher, as you give, so you receive. As I give, so I receive. It is in that asness. It's within that presentation that as we are giving, that's what we receive back. And one of the first and foremost things that we need to remember is that it is the Father within that is doing the work. It is the Christ within. It is the Holy Spirit within. Whatever resonates with you, know that I am here, placed on this earth plane, to be an expression and give this divine love in my unique way. You see, that's what's so great about it. This topic also reminds me quite a bit, and we've been doing this in society now for the last several years. How many of you have heard and know what they call, what we say, think about and do when they say pay it forward? Paying it forward. So somebody does a favor for you. So, oh, let me pay you back. And they'll say, oh, no. You pay it forward. You go to somebody else that wasn't involved in this transaction and do it for them. What a fun thing. I love it. There's a certain time of year we have Kindness Week. You know, why don't we have Kindness Week every week? To pay it forward, to give of our energy, our essence, and see what happens. How do you feel when somebody does something for you that's unexpected? Has anybody ever bought you a coffee that you've been standing in behind them in line in Starbucks? How would you feel if somebody did that for you? Would you be grateful? Absolutely. Would you accept it? Absolutely. Some people will say, oh, no. What does that do? That squelches the gift. Recognize that whatever is being given from the heart, that God, love, this divine energy, is doing it. So let your bloated nothingness step aside and let that divine circuit work. And what a joy you'll have. Oh my gosh, what an amazing thing. So I'd like to recognize there's 2 points that I want to make this morning. Very, very first. And that is that we are here in this embodiment of this human being. And I want you to recognize that we are servants. We are a servant to the divine. We are serving this love energy that is within us, that has been given us this life, fully, freely, joyously. And we are here to acquisition to it, to allow it to live through us. Now, you know, the ego mind, when I have said that word servant, how many of you, maybe you wouldn't acknowledge it openly, but the ego mind might be saying, I'm not going to be a slave to anyone, to anything. I'm not going to be a slave. A slave and a servant are two different entirely things. A slave is something that someone is forced to do. If you're a slave, you are forced to do it. You have no option. You have no choice, correct? If you are a servant to the Lord, a servant to the love, a servant to God, to this divine energy, that's your choice. You want to serve this divine energy the very best way that you can. And to do that is to recognize that everyone else is that divine energy in expression. So what I give out, I am getting back. There's no way else that you can look at it, since we're all one. I was recently given, it's interesting, you know, how you meet somebody you've known for years, and nothing was said previously to our meeting. We were going to a restaurant, and she was getting out of her car, and I said, oh, before you close your door, let me give this to you, put this in your car. And I was giving her a book. And she goes, oh, okay, well, I'm not to be outdone. Here, I brought you this book. And the book she brought me was Beyond Words and Thoughts by Joel Goldsmith. Now, I have read Joel Goldsmith, The Infinite Way, have that. It's a little tiny book. I've underlined it and highlighted it and all that. But I had not read Beyond Words and Thought. And so, of course, I'm diving into it because how many of you are familiar with Joel Goldsmith? Well, a few of you. Good, good, good. Joel Goldsmith is a mystic, honestly, and he is not a heady writer. He's a full heart writer. And he talks about having the experience. It's capital with a capital E. And I want to share with you some of the things that I underlined recently in his book. Prayer has nothing to do with getting God to do something. We know that in our teachings. We don't beseech God. We don't say, God, please, do this for me. Or if you do this for me, I'll do that for you. There's none of this bargaining. There's none of this pleading or begging, right? Prayer is a state of silence in which you commune with God and receive His grace. That is why the Master recognized that He was a servant. And our relationship with God, that is all you and I are. Think about it. Who's running this universe? This beautiful energy, this beautiful creative power of the divine. We are here to serve it. The closer one is to being a master, the more of a servant he will become. Not my will, but thine be done. You will understand yourself to be an instrument of God's grace, and the benefit that you can be to anyone is in proportion to your receptivity, your devotion, and your sacrifice of self, small s. It is the mind that parades and vaults itself. Let the mind be still, and at an hour when ye think not, behold the experience. How many of you have had that experience? As you go into the quietness of your own chamber of your heart and have felt that love, that deep, abiding love that for me ends up being joy. I have shared with you this before, but it's been quite a while. And it was interesting because I've had an experience, capital E. I remember the date precisely, December 21st, 2012. And I was working my day job still in insurance in La Mesa. And I needed to go to Parkway Plaza to buy some Christmas gifts on my lunch hour. And as I got in the car, Paco Bell's Canon in D came on. And all of a sudden, I just was transported into the kingdom. I recognized that everything is right here, that I am living in and of this wonderful energy. And of course, I started bawling, duh. crying as I'm driving to East. 10, 15-minute drive, isn't it, from La Mesa to El Cajon? And I was just so elevated, so elated, raised up. I don't know how to describe it. And just everywhere I looked, it was like, oh my gosh, it's like I was in heaven. So I see these flashing lights, on the signs that says, prepare to stop, because of all the traffic, the Christmas traffic. And so I pulled up and I got my parking place and I went into the first store and there was a line and I stood, but I was just so enveloped in this love. So I took my turn and I spoke to people and did what I needed to do. And then I walked across the parking lot over to Macy's and I wanted to get something at Macy's. And I had a gift card and I didn't know how much was on it. Well, back in the day, in 2012, this was a few years ago, they had to make a phone call to an 800 number to find out how much I had on my card. Maybe they still do, I don't know. And so I was waiting, and people were in line around me, the little kids and everything, and I just was in this detached observation sort of state. And then I found out what I needed, and I got finished the transaction, got in my car, drove back to La Mesa, and drove up to the driveway, and got out of my car, and I thought, this car's dirty. I'm going to give it a wash. And I proceeded to get the hose out and, watered it down and got soap, and I washed down my car. I don't know that I dried it. Maybe I didn't dry it, but I know I washed it. Got back in the car and drove back to my work, which wasn't far from my home. I was 5 minutes late to work. I drove from La Mesa to El Cajon and back. That in and of itself is a half an hour. And I stopped at 2 places where I was standing in line and getting things. And then I washed my car. Time stood still for me. Time was not an element in that whole process. To me, that was an experience that Joel Goldsmith is talking about. And so many times since then, I have worked at recapturing that energy, that essence. So the other day, as now that I'm retired from the day job, I get to take my usually about an hour walk in around the neighborhood. And I was on my way to Wrights Field. And I did a different route. And as I was going through Wrights, as I was taking this walk, I was immersing myself in that field of energy of the divine, of living in the kingdom, of knowing that everything is provided for me, that all is well. And all of that was I was just, being oozed in that essence. And as the sun was starting to go down, and I had taken a different route, and I looked at this one path, and it was fairly narrow, and it was rocky, and it was fairly steep. And my inner self said, no, don't take that path. It's too narrow, it's too rocky, too steep. So then I continued on a little bit further, and there was a wider path. Wasn't as steep, but it was still rocky. And I thought, I'm going to take that one. I haven't taken that path before. I took that path, and at one point, a rock slipped out from under my foot, and I said, oh, I'm falling. I'm going down. And I don't know how many of you have done this where it feels like it's slow motion. And I'm observing that, okay, I'm falling. But I was so relaxed, I guess, I don't know what it is. I just went with it. And I was going to bump, 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 and kind of, okay, I'm stopped now, what's going on? And I had my glasses on. And I thought, oh gosh, did I break my glass? No, my glasses were fine. But I went up and I touched my forehead, and oh my gosh, I had a goose egg that must have been 1.5 inches deep, literally. I mean, it was like, boop, this big old bump. And my phone had fallen out of my pocket. It was just laying there. It was okay. My glasses weren't broken. I looked down at myself, and my knee, I pulled up, I had pants on, I pulled my knee up and had 2 little dots of blood, but it wasn't bleeding. My elbow had a little tear on it, but it wasn't bleeding. I had blood that was coming off a tiny little nick on my hand that was dripping, so I, took care of that, took care of the leak. And I stood up and I thought, wow, I believe that I must have had angels caressing me as I took that spill. Because I thought, my goodness, the potential of what it could have been, based on what it was quite a difference. I mean, I didn't even get a bruise on my knee. I'm telling you this because when we immerse ourselves and remember to remember, not just in the times when we are in our devout, Om presence of meditating, but when we remember to remember, Joel Goldsmith says, do it 2 or 3 times a day. 2 or 3 times a day, tap back in, whatever you're doing, and say, oh, yeah, I am a servant of the divine. I have a job to do here. I am here to be a vessel. I am here to be a demonstration, an avenue through which love expresses. That givingness of love is expressing. That's why I'm here. I honestly feel that when we do that, we will experience a life that gives us a heck of a lot more than anything we could ever plan ourselves. When we turn our lives over, turn our lives over to this divine within and let it give its agenda to us and not argue with it. Just take, and I bet you every one of you have gone into some meditation or you've had some fleeting thought that's gone through your head, oh, if I could do this, or maybe I could do that. Have you listened to it? Have you taken one little step toward that end? Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be true confessions here. I don't know when it was, probably in January, it was the beginning of the year. Remember how I stood up here and I said, I'm going to have all my paperwork gone through and cleaned out by the first day of spring? Maybe some of you remember. Maybe you don't. I do. It was a vow that I said, I'm going to have all my paperwork cleaned out. Well, spring is coming really quick. And let me see. I've cleaned out 2 of the 6 file cabinets. I've got a heck of a way to go before I am able to say that I did it. But what does it take? It takes one step at a time. It takes opening the drawer, number 1, and looking at it, and just grabbing that much of a handful of it. And see, oh gosh, it was so cool. When I did, the other day, I was opening this one drawer, and it's one of those, it's in a desk, and you can have Pendaflex files in it. But in the back of the Pendaflex files is a whole other area, like maybe 5 or 6 inches deep. And I thought, what's that? What is back there anyway? What have I got that? And so I'm pulling the drawer out all the way, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was wondering where all that stuff was. And there it is, right there. It's all those, when you buy something and it gives you a pamphlet, or, this is the instructions for it, or blah, 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 blah. Well, I had it in like a big Ziploc bag. And I thought, what is all that stuff? Oh, that's all my stuff. But then when I did, of course, I went through it, and oh, well, that thing is trash. I don't even need that anymore. That's gone. We want to remember that as a servant, serving the divine, that means that we are living in the now. And we are to let go. To me, see, what this whole idea of releasing the paperwork and all that stuff, it's not about releasing the paperwork. It's about living in the now and letting go of the stuff that no longer serves me, letting go of the stuff that is weighting me down. That's the benefit to letting go of all of this stuff, is that I can say, you know what? I am living in the kingdom right here and right now, and I am able to give from my fullness to all, without reserve, without someone having to deserve it. Does God give that way? Absolutely not. The grace of God is there for everyone, if we are open and receptive, to receive it. So that's what we are here to do, is to be that arm, to be that voice, to be that leg, to be that hand of God, of the goodness, of the love, to others as we are one. You cannot give to someone else without giving to yourself. Give from your wholeness. Be the servant to the divine that is within you. And look what happens. you're going to have that joy, that love, that energy beaming through you, saving you from disaster when you fall. Each of you will do it in your own way. No two of you will do it the same way, and that's perfect. Because this God does not duplicate itself. The love in me beholds the love in you. The joy in me beholds the joy in you. The light in me beholds the light in you. We are one in the peace of the Lord. Namaste. Love you.